All right, guys, let's go. Rover Sports, we are live here. Nick Siriannini, the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. I know he worked with Phillip Rivers a while. I think the guy's a pretty good dude. He's like 36, 37 years old. He's kind of in the mold of a Kevin Stefanski. I think that this is actually a really good hire for the Eagles. I mean, you get Frank Reich, you get his influence back. I mean, Nick is a great guy, very easy to work with. He kind of has some age and experience. He's worked with Phillip Rivers a very long time, so he knows how to develop quarterback play. And it's all up to him hiring a staff, but I'll tell you, you have Eric Bieniemy, and I just think that Siriannini's personality, I think that he might get along with more people better. You look back in the Bieniemy's past at the University of Colorado, and there were some issues there at the University of Colorado. You also look at Mahomes and how great Mahomes is, and I think that this Eagles hire is a very intriguing hire. I think it'll be a decent hire. He's a young guy. I've heard him speak before. You just never heard him getting interviewed with the Philadelphia Eagles. It was kind of a surprise hire. And it was interesting. I don't think, did Dwayne Haskins just get signed actually by Pittsburgh? Wow. Very interesting. Didn't really expect that from Mike Tomlin at all. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think it could be a smokescreen until the draft. But interesting signing for the Pittsburgh Steelers for sure. We have breaking news, but for the Eagles, I think that this hire is very decent. I think it's all up to him to create a staff. I don't think that this guy is absolutely brilliant. Like, I don't think he's an amazing hire, but I think he's like a B- to B hire. I think Bieniemy would have not been that good. Todd Bowles, not very good. Josh McDaniels would have been a disaster. So the Eagles avoid disaster with Todd Bowles, with Josh McDaniels. They hire a guy that, again, has been around Frank Reich, that knows consistency. I think that Sirianni's going to be around here for a little while. I don't know if he's going to be elite, but again, I think that he has a decent chance to work out and be a pretty solid head coach. And also, you're getting Sirianni at a very, very cheap price. I think that Dan Campbell press conference today, that made me want to go absolutely tear a door down and run through a damn door. I mean, that was absolutely riveting. It was incredible. It was absolutely spectacular. Dan Campbell partnered with Brad Holmes. These Detroit Lions, outside of the Giants, they're now my favorite team in the NFC East and in the whole NFL. You look at the city of Detroit and what Detroit has been through for a really long time, and the fact that Detroit is finally going to be a place of great optimism and success with Dan Campbell, the hard hat mentality, the physical nature, battling adversity. He really connects to the fan base of Detroit. I'm so happy for Coach Campbell. He's one of the most humble guys that you're going to come across in a press conference. And I cannot wait to see him in Detroit and follow every single move. And I'll say that to you guys on this show. Dan Campbell is absolutely spectacular. So Sirianni for the Eagles, very, very interesting. I'm happy it's not Lincoln Riley. I'm happy it's not Kellen Moore. Am I a little scared of Sirianni? A tiny bit scared. Joe Brady as well. I think Joe Brady probably dipped out of the job. But it's just very interesting to see what's going on with Nick Sirianni going to the Eagles. People are going to now blame Bieniemy and say that, the league just doesn't want to hire Eric Bieniemy. But again, each owner is going to have their individual mandate on who they decide to hire. And Jeffrey Lurie really likes Nick Sirianni, and these guys really clicked. And I think that Sirianni is really going to get along with Howie Roseman. And for Roseman and Lurie, this seems like a very nice guy that they could pretty much, build around. And I think that Sirianni is going to do a pretty dang good job. Pretty standard hire. I don't think it's an A+ hire like a Lincoln Riley or a Kellen Moore would have been, or even Dan Campbell or even Ryan Nielsen. I think his motivational tactics are fine. I think that'll be like a fine hire in the NFL. You start to look at Zach Taylor. You look at other offensive young coaches. I don't think he's going to be as brilliant as Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay, but I always could be wrong in that process. But you look at Matt LaFleur and what LaFleur was able to do, and usually young offensive minds work in this league. I think Bieniemy is struggling to get a head coaching job because in the interviews, I think he's not really preparing well for the specific interviews. It's just an educated guess. I'm not in the interviewing process, but they look at Eric Bieniemy and he might not be studying a team very well. He also might not be clicking Ryan with a head coaching with the ownership. The interviewing process, the first impression is very important. You also look at Adam Gase and Josh McDaniels. Adam Gase won a Super Bowl with Peyton Manning. Josh McDaniels won a championship with Tom Brady. So people wonder, when you're working under Andy Reid and you're working with Patrick Mahomes, how much responsibility do you have working with Mahomes? Because Mahomes is so magical and such a great player, and Travis Kelce's so great, and the Hunt family so spectacular, that really Steve Spagnuolo too is not getting a head coaching job. But really they look at Patrick Mahomes and they think that Mahomes is so special that anybody can do what they're doing. It's kind of like why McDaniels is not getting another head coaching opportunity. It's just the nature of the business. They look at Mahomes, and as a coach, people want to see what more can you do with less. And for Bieniemy, he's always had all this level of success. I think if Bieniemy wanted to be a head coach, and it's unfortunate, but I think Bieniemy would have to be an offensive coordinator like out in Detroit. But again, for you to get a head coaching job, you need to study the owner. It's all about the owner. It's all about how he views you as a specific candidate. You have to connect with the owner and the general manager. And if you have to suck up to them, and if you have to act a certain way to get a job, that's oftentimes how people get jobs. And it's sometimes unfortunate. The NFL is a fraternity. It's a clique. It's how John Lynch got the job with the 49ers, because John Lynch is a king of networking. And John Lynch, when you go to every single event, he's rubbing elbows with everybody there. So Bieniemy needs to sell himself to an owner to get a head coaching job, okay? And unfortunately, being in Kansas City, there's going to be doubt. Then we also look at Bieniemy. We look at Eric Bieniemy, and we also look at Matt Nagy, who was in the same spot as Eric Bieniemy with Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes. And Matt Nagy is really struggling as a head coach in an Andy Reid scheme. His scheme is nothing like Andy Reid's. You also look at Marty Morningweg, who's under Andy Reid, who hasn't been that good. Deuce Staley's under Andy Reid. Doug Peterson has just been fired, and his offense has been terrible without Andy Reid. So you would be hiring another Matt Nagy, another Doug Peterson. So it's time for Bieniemy to maybe go to a new team and be an offensive coordinator for, say, the Lions. And if he does a spectacular job, maybe with Matthew Stafford, I really think that people will view this differently. But also, here's the reality of it. There's only 5 coaching openings every single year. And look at Brian Daboll, what he did with Josh Allen. And Brian Daboll doesn't have a head job either. So all of that is something to take note of, right? Brian Daboll doesn't have a head job. There's only a couple of options. Nick Siriannini is a good guy. He's a wide receiver coach. He worked for a long time with Phillip Rivers and Frank Reich, and the Eagles have a huge connection with Frank Reich. And when Frank Reich was there, he was the brains behind that Super Bowl. You know what? Frank Reich was the brains behind the Super Bowl of the Eagles, and the Eagles are trying to re-encapsulate that now with a guy in Siriannini, but also Bieniemy, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore. They realize the Eagles are a dumpster fire. there's a chance that Bieniemy, that Todd Bowles, that some of the guys that went there, the Eagles are a dumpster fire. Who wants the Eagles job? You have an owner that's annoying. You have a guy in Howie Roseman that never gets fired, that's been through 5 coaching changes, that's completely sabotaging the organization. You have Jalen Hurts versus Carson Wentz. You have locker room, complete and total locker room issues. You're replacing one of the best coaches in Eagles history in Doug Peterson, because Peterson did bring about a championship. So even though Andy Reid and Dick Vermeil were more consistent than Doug, you're still replacing a legend of Eagles football in Doug Peterson. You have to go to the Northeast, to a cold, tough Northeastern town, to a fan base that is really hostile, really has zero patience at all for the job. It's a this Eagles job is a crappy job with Howie Roseman. It's a horrible job. And that's why you see this random wide receivers coach, offensive coordinator, who happens to be decent. So the Eagles didn't completely butcher this. They could have hired Josh McDaniels, who's a complete jerk. They could have hired Todd Bowles, who has no idea how to run an offense. But the Eagles hired an offensive mind who's young, who's worked with Rivers, who's worked with Frank Reich, and they got a Frank Reich assistant. And it's a pretty dang good hire. It's a decent hire. It's a B- hire. Let's go through the hires, okay? Dan Campbell, I'm giving that hire an A- for Detroit. I'm giving it an A. Brandon Staley, I'm giving a big old A. For Robert Saleh, everybody in the free world's going to give him an A+, but I'm going to go against the public. I'm going to give Robert Saleh a B. Then you look at Arthur Smith. I'm giving that hire a B as well. I'll put Saleh as like a B+. Atlanta, Arthur Smith is a B. Again, Arthur Smith and Saleh, they both have high upsides. I would say that Siriannini and Dan Campbell have the lower upside, Siriannini with the lowest upside, and Brandon Staley just seems like he was destined to be a head coach, how he's risen from John Carroll University. Because at John Carroll University in Ohio, the coaches that were there, you have Brian Dable, I think. You have Tom Telesco, who was at John Carroll. That's how John Carroll, Tom Telesco, the GM, knows Brandon Staley for the Chargers. Who else was at John Carroll? Nick Caserio was at John Carroll. Josh McDaniels was at John Carroll. Every single coach from the Patriots went to John Carroll University in Ohio. It's creepy, John Carroll University. Look up John Carroll University and look at the people that are doing that. Pete Carroll, John Carroll. You're right. And Thomas, it's right. You got to BS with the owner to get a job. And sometimes the guys that are great schematically, I think Eric Bieniemy, you know what? The guy deserves a head coaching job because he's orchestrated one of the great offenses in NFL history. And the guy just wins. So maybe, it is a little bit sad that the guy can't get a head coaching job when he's excellent at his job. He might have to go be an OC somewhere else. Luckily, I think Eric's making north of $1 million, and he's in a wonderful organization. So believe it or not, Eric is still doing great. Even though he hasn't had a head coaching job, he is still in the lottery ticket because he makes over millions of dollars, and he also gets to coach one of the greatest quarterbacks that we've ever seen in this league. So it's going to be interesting, though. Houston could still hire Eric Bieniemy. That could still work. And then Deshaun Watson would maybe get along with Eric Bieniemy. So that would be interesting for Houston because you look at Jack Easterby, and he's a controversial figure in Houston. So that would be a good hire because the fans love Bieniemy. And then with what's his name? With Jack Easterby is a very controversial general manager that people think is not a qualified football guy, that he's more of a culture and more of a religious figure altogether. But Dan Campbell, amazing press conference. Robert Saleh, Brandon Staley. We could look back. If I'm going to think of the best coaches from this cycle, it's going to be Brandon Staley, and I'm going to say Dan Campbell's going to be a great coach as well. I'm going to take Staley and Dan Campbell. The other guys like Saleh, like Sirianni and Arthur Smith, they're going to fade behind on this list. I see Arthur Smith. I don't know if Arthur Smith can motivate people. So if I had to pick two, I'm going to pick Campbell and Brandon Staley out of my two. Robert Saleh would then be the third choice. And then I'm going with Siriannini last. Siriannini has a low upside. He'll be around 5 years, but I don't think he'll really win anything of substantial value. Anyway, guys, it's 3 o'clock on a work day. Needed to get the news across, though. Nick heading to the Philadelphia Eagles, new coach. Giants fans shouldn't be that scared. It's not Lincoln Riley. It's not Kellen Moore. But this guy is not a terrible hire. I think this guy will still be able to win games. He'll still be tough. I think the Eagles fans will like him in the press conference. Again, he's a nice guy by all accounts, works well with people. Frank Reich obviously loves the guy, and he could be a gem. He could be a good head coach. So I think that he could be decent. I don't know if he'll be great. I don't think he'll be great. I've heard Nick talk before. I heard that he worked with Phillip Rivers. I know that Nick Siriannini, I knew that when he went to Indianapolis that he'd be a really good offensive coordinator. He's seen how it's worked before. So again, an interesting hire for the Eagles, but it just shows you about the job. So there you guys go. All right. Take care, guys. Peace.